Welcome to Motorcycle Adventure Dirt Bike TV. This is a copy of a presentation I gave on the main stage at the ABR Festival in Warwickshire, England on Friday the 28th of June. Hi, my name's Dave Darcy. I've been riding motorcycles for 50 years. I'd classify myself as a dirt-oriented adventure rider, and many of you in this audience could identify with that. I'm going to break up my talk with some short video to assist you in getting an understanding of what we do at Motorcycle Adventure Dirt Bike TV. It's also an opportunity to showcase the landscape of my country. And let's start by introducing Nugget, my most highly paid actor. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Mad TV's 2022 Husky Track, held in southeast Queensland. In this final episode we move into open country, speed is up and Nugget gets intimate with the gate.
Oh, fuck, he's gonna hit it! Oh, Nugget!
We're privileged to ride a private farm with a brilliant natural terrain grass track that made us jump for joy. Nugget becomes a medic and provides a patient, Darren, with a killer python drip, a new medical innovation likely to take on amongst adventure riders. Now, before we get started, do yourself a favour. If you've missed episode 1 of this series, click on the link above to immerse yourself in husky goodness. My journey to this stage is a simple story, underpinned by passion and fun. The combination of my two loves, making home movies and riding motorcycle adventure, came together. It all started from filming my mates riding, and I made DVDs of those rides, and they became popular. And here's me in the Simpson Desert on a clay pan. Simpson Desert is well over 1,000 dunes, and in the middle though there's clay pans, and enjoying a bit of water there, so the desert was green for that ride. And then this thing called YouTube came along, and my life would never be the same. It helped me open so many doors and gave me the great fortune to meet inspiring people who give off this aura of positive energy. This is the North Island of New Zealand, and I'm filming Chris Birch. This is the only guy I stand in front of filming when he's power sliding on a KTM 1190 at full noise. Precision, that's what Chris Birch is about. If there's one thing I've learned, if you surround yourself with people with no vision and no passion who don't make you feel good, get rid of them quick. They'll squash your dreams. But fortunately for me, YouTube opened the door to motivated, focused, passionate people. Don't walk out yet, this is not a homage to YouTube. But what it did do was gave me a voice that could be heard right around the world. At the beginning, there weren't too many people listening, but one guy from the village of Bowbrick Hill, which I think is just down the road, an hour or so from here, was inspired by what I was doing and he reached out to me. I didn't know it at the time, but I had met a riding companion who I would later discover had all the qualities necessary to partner with me to ride KTM 690s from London to Sydney. His name is Darren Higginson, and I think he's in the audience today. Darren hates that shot with the plane on his head. We started with the Jag of the Century, securing a full sponsorship from KTM HQ in Mattergofen, Austria, in circumstances that mirrored a fairy tale. We weren't in the motorcycle industry, we weren't racers, we had no connection, we were nothings. It was pissing down rain as we headed to Mattergofen for a factory inspection the following day. We spied a farm stay a couple of k's out of town, only to discover that a guy that lived behind the farmhouse worked for KTM. In barely understandable English, our host said, "Man next door, work for KTM." That night, we shared a few beers with him and I enthusiastically showed him some footage on my laptop riding over the dunes of the Simpson Desert on my KTM 640. Earlier in the evening, Gottfried, as we now knew him, started his conversation telling us that he wrote motorcycle manuals for KTM. A few more beers later, and he revealed he'd worked at the KTM factory for 30 years. And at the end of the night, when I think he recognised we were fair dinkum, he revealed he was the production manager. And this is a still from the video that I showed him riding over the Simpson Desert. The following day, we were walking through the factory floor on a tour with the PR manager, and we asked him if he would support our dream. And he started with, thousands of people asked for bikes for a ride, and Darren and I knew we were heading for a knockback. Then Gottfried suddenly emerged from an office and shouted from a gantry above us, "My boys!" He came down and he gave us a big hug, and he said to the PR manager, "We give these boys bikes. They're riding from London to Sydney." And so it was. Now, what's that saying? Be careful of what you wish for. And this is when we're heading actually from London to Sydney, and was then the national KTM promotions manager. We were offered KTM 990s or KTM 690s. I wanted to cross the Simpson Desert, so we went for the 690s. On reflection, not a good choice at that time. My next stroke of luck was bumping into John Mitchinson of Rally Road Products UK. He was a specialist in building KTM 690s and had developed a whole range of accessories that turned this bike into a highly capable round-the-worlder. Unfortunately, he couldn't turn me into a highly capable mechanic. John, Darren and I became great mates, and in 2015 the mad bastard came out to Australia and rode his rally-rated Honda CBX 500X across the Simpson Desert. Completely unheard of, never to be repeated. That's what I'm talking about, people that push the limits and never say no. And here's John at the Tropic of Capricorn. So he's made it through all the dunes, and I think we've only got a couple of 100 kilometres to go. The mechanical unreliability of our KTM 690s was consistent in one thing. We were always making new friends to help us out of a jam. And by the end of our ride from London to Sydney, those new friends would form a chain stretching halfway around the world. Here's our friends in Kathmandu, Nepal. They knew us well. The start of this talk may sound like a KTM whinge. It's not. I still ride this bike and it goes like a train and has for years. The suspension and handling is unbelievable. Over 500 kilometres range, a true round-the-worlder. Well, once it's sorted out, fuel pumps, fuel filters, roller rocker arms, those with old 690s in the room know the deal.
This is gonna be the best day ever. This is gonna be the best day ever. Wake up, top of the morning. The bacon is crispy, the coffee is pouring. My meditation is peeling an orange. The bank says I'm already scoring. I got a parking spot right outside. Step into my brand new ride. All we ever get is green lights and blue skies. This is gonna be the best day ever.
Well, some days it is the best day ever, and this was a cracker, riding Ducati Desert X's, but I would caution, if I bin that bike, I have to pay for it. Time to talk about adversity. We've got the good and we've got the challenging. Here's me riding through Fesh Fesh at well over 4,000 metres, around 14,000 feet on the Tibetan Plateau. It's tough going. The effects of oxygen deprivation on man and machine is real. I agonised over the choice of this word and reluctantly settled on it. Real adversity is happening now in a number of places throughout the world. The Middle East, the Ukraine, parts of Africa, sadly the list goes on. So let's be more discerning and call it motorcycle trip adversity. So it puts the intensity right to the bottom of the pile. When you kick off these motorcycle trips, particularly the bigger ones, you can get pretty self-absorbed when things go wrong. The anguish is intensified by being in unfamiliar surroundings, in isolated areas with unfamiliar customs, languages and laws. Those items in themselves have taken you out of your comfort zone, and now on top of that, you've got a problem. I guess it would be remiss of me not to mention that Darren started the London to Sydney trip with 2 broken hands. But hey, you can watch the London to Sydney motorcycle adventure on YouTube, and I'll leave that for homework. But as you can see, that is a decent break. He's got pins, multiple pins in his wrist there. It all went to shit in the vast flat grasslands of Kazakhstan known as the Steppe, which stretch on for thousands of kilometres. After 18 hours of riding through the night, I woke up lying in the back of a truck on a mattress made mostly of dried cow dung. I had slept in my helmet, gloves and boots to prevent the mosquitoes, which were slightly smaller than a cockatoo, from draining every last drop of my blood. Now, a cockatoo is a fairly decent bird, so that's the size of the mosquitoes. They were huge. Not quite. One of the KTMs had broken down again, and so it went. We leapt from disaster to recovery time and again. Each time we walked away with another small insight about ourselves and others, learning more about the essence of humanity and the innate instinct to help and nurture that transcends culture, class and country. You see the best in humanity when you're on your knees. In these bleak moments of vulnerability, the lens through which you see the world and reflect on your existence becomes pin sharp and life-changing. Adversity is like an enema. You know it's going to be uncomfortable, but something good will come out of it. And here's Darren and I just about to fall asleep on the steppes of Kazakhstan in those big wide grasslands. And what brought us to this moment? An inanimate mechanical object made of metal, rubber and plastic, a motorcycle. And when you push your limits, there's a good chance it will become the quintessential portal between you and your understanding of the world. Sam Manicom, who's here at the festival, has written a heap about the power of the motorcycle to do this. However, I must caution, this won't happen with a trip to the coffee shop. No pain, no gain. And here's Kaiser helping us with directions in Kazakhstan. He was quite insistent that we pronounce his name right. Kaiser! Kaiser! And we kept repeating it until it was to his satisfaction. On that same trip, my friendship with a Brit named John Pullen was forged in the fire of adversity. And sadly, John recently passed away, and this is an ideal venue to recognise John's contribution to the ethos of adventure riding. We met on the vast Russian steppe. John reached out his hand to help after yet another breakdown, knowing full well it would be to his detriment. Despite that, he hitched up his already overloaded Yamaha Tenere 660 with 10 metres of parachute cord to tow my KTM to the next city, Samara, 400 kilometres away. It was equivalent to towing my bike from London to Paris, but with the freeways replaced by a 2-lane motocross track, jammed with overloaded trucks. They were lurching precariously from side to side, and there were trucks on the side of the road with broken frames and busted wheel bearings. It was a tough gig. Yet John did that without hesitation, embodying that spirit of camaraderie and selflessness that adventure often brings out in people. His unwavering support and good humour turned a potential disaster into a testament to human kindness and resilience. Every breakdown, every setback, every mosquito bite led us to meet incredible people and form bonds that would last a lifetime. It wasn't just a journey across continents, it was a journey into the heart of what it means to be human. In the end, it's the people we meet and the connections we make that turn a rough adventure into an unforgettable story. And as I remember John, I realised that our trip was never about the destination. It was about the people who helped us along the way and the friends we've made who are forever etched in our hearts. I'm catching up with John's riding companion of 20 years, John Midgley, who's to the right of John, in the next couple of days, and really look forward to seeing him and sharing some funny times. This is the Flinders Ranges, stunning country for adventure. 2022 Triumph Rally Explorer has hit Australian shores, and we want to know, does this bike have what it takes to be classed as a dirt-oriented super tourer? And if we want to know that, we've got to head into the Australian outback. Big sky, big brown land, and thousands of kilometres of dirt roads and tracks that very quickly reveal the strengths and weaknesses of machinery not designed for purpose. Our goal is to punch out around 4,000 kilometres with a substantial proportion of those miles on the dirt. The plan is to ride from Triumph HQ in Melbourne into the Flinders Ranges, onto Cameron Corner, and then head southeast back to Sydney through some of the most interesting back roads we can find. But there's one challenge that will keep us on our toes, a wet weather system called La Nina that dominates our continent for the third consecutive year and turns the outback tracks into sticky, impassable mush. Yeah, that was a cracking ride. The Flinders Ranges is probably one of the best adventure locations in Australia. It's just stunning. So time to talk about refreshing adventure, something completely different that this old dog did the other day. Just a couple of weeks ago, Elwood Motorcycle Adventures, an off-road motorcycle tour company, gave me the wonderful opportunity of filming their ladies' ride from Cairns to the tip of Australia, known as Cape York, now called Pajinka. It was tough. The rivers were still flooded from the effects of the wet season, and getting to the top for anyone in these conditions would be an achievement. Have a look at that DR, like the back tail lights nearly underwater there. Let's have a look, and just to give you a sample of how tough it was. And some of these women had just been taken clean out of their comfort zones. They'd never done anything like this.
There's some people going way out of their comfort zone. Good going. Here goes Nikki. Go Nikki.
So you can see that was pretty full on. And how's those little yellow submarines, the Suzuki DRZ 400s, cracking bikes. Up until this experience, all the professionally organised rides that I have filmed have at the most comprised of 5% women. The ladies' ride was another world of adventure that was inspiring to this old dog. We all know it, women look at the world differently, and they certainly ride adventure differently. And I think I can say that with authority. My job is to capture riders in being challenged, and in those moments it's not long before they forget the camera is there and they express their true selves. I have the added advantage of being able to zoom in on their facial expressions and movements. Behind the lens, I'm recording their triumphs and challenges both as individuals and collectively. Behind the lens, I'm recording their triumphs and challenges both as individuals and collectively. When I'm filming adventure rides, I feel like David Attenborough or some anthropologist studying a tribe of pygmies in the rainforests of South America. And one of the ladies picked me up on that.
This is the rarest thing I've ever filmed. I just want to say that. It's absolutely the rarest thing I've ever filmed.
Rare?
Yeah.
What's rare? This is so rare.
Yeah.
We're out here at Moreton Telegraph Station and we have a female
Who's changing a tyre? Notice how she pulls the axle.
straight out.
Straight out.
Estrogen is pumping at the moment.
Tanya is a wonderful enduro rider, an Australian enduro champion. Fantastic to ride behind and film, and really enjoyed time with her. She's a real laugh a minute. So what did I find so inspiring with this group of riders? Well, I guess the absence of testosterone is obvious. There's no I've got the biggest or I'm the fastest. The highly competent riders display their expertise quietly and are frequently seen helping and encouraging the less skilled. There's no horrific crashes or excessive speed or riding beyond limits because they have nothing to prove. They are comfortable in their own skin. Collaboration and nurturing were the standout features. It's no wonder women's only adventure rides are taking off in Australia, and I reflected that as a social media influencer, I hadn't done enough to encourage women into this sport. Only 5% of my audience are women. This is a recent Honda trip into the outback. In the heart of Australian outback, where the horizon seems to stretch on forever, we embark on a cracking motorcycle adventure. Our mission? To push Honda's 2024 adventure range to its limits, testing the capabilities of the Africa Twin and Transalp in one of the most demanding terrains on Earth. We're joined by motorcycle legend Daryl Beattie and his team.
The weather we've had and the rain that they've had out through all the way through Central Australia, right into this region, the Gascoyne region, you can see it's like carpet in the spring rains. It's absolutely stunning. So
we set off from Carnarvon, a small town nestled on the western edge of Australia. Our destination, Uluru, the iconic Reg monolith that stands as the spiritual heart of this vast land. Okay, which bike? This is the number one question I get asked when I'm out and about. My answer is, I don't think going to satisfy anyone, but it may be entertaining, or I hope it's going to be entertaining. Every time I go into the Simpson Desert, it's flooding. It's bizarre, but I have never ridden in the desert when it's dry. It's always been lush and full of purple, white and yellow flowers, and full of wildlife. Budgerigars in huge flocks that change the colour of the sky with flashes of iridescent greens. This is Eyre Creek, normally a dirt ditch, dusty and dry, but when it's wet, a final obstacle to getting out of the Simpson Desert. This is extremely isolated. You do not want to sink your bike here. There's no turning back. 400 kilometres and 1,200 sand dunes are behind you, and you don't have enough fuel. There is only one way, and that is forward. On this day, I recall walking this crossing and the water lapped my testicles, and I knew what that measurement meant. I had an inch to spare before it flooded the airbox if I stopped for some reason. Creating a bow wave and maintaining steady speed reduced that risk, so I had to commit. I'm aboard my first true love, the mighty 2007 KTM 640 Adventure. I love this bike. It was the quintessential explorer. It had all the attributes: excellent suspension, 400 kilometres plus fuel range. It was comfortable, air filter up high and good carrying capacity. It even had a Kickstarter backup and of course a 10,000 kilometre service interval. Some riders felt it vibrated too much. I didn't, and I regretted the day I sold it. From that day forward, nothing would come out of a factory purpose-built that rocked my boat. I was doomed to bike builds and compromises. At this point in time, my favourite bike for adventure is the Husqvarna 701. Mine has minimal modification, rally pegs, bark busters and an OEM screen, and when needed, a set of soft pannier racks. My only frustration is that it doesn't have the fuel range I'd like. I really need 400 Ks, and to get that, I need to resort to a fuel bladder. Now, this is when things get complicated, and there's another element I need to bring into the mix, and that's aging. For motorcycle adventurers, menopause kicks in during their late 50s to early 60s. The first sign, an extra bike in the shed. It might be a new powerhouse as heavy as a small car, or an old clunker they couldn't afford when young. But one thing's certain, they'll farkle that bike up to the nines. Now, I'm not sure if farkle's a word that's used in the UK, but basically you accessorise the bikes. Just cover them in accessories. It's an absolute riot. We're tossing cash at our bikes like it's confetti at a horsepower party. Meanwhile, our skills are bailing out quicker than a kangaroo on a trampoline. So just confirming, it's clear that I'm well into the stages of adventure menopause as I have 4 bikes in the shed. Now, you've seen the 690, you've seen the 701. This is my latest. The 2023 501 is my latest edition. Purpose built for the really tough rides and desert blasting. 141 kilograms fuel full, great carrying capacity, good lighting and comfort, suspension to die for. This is a weapon even in the hands of a 63-year-old pensioner. It's a cracking bike. And then there's my porky Yamaha T700 coming in at 240 kilograms. It has all the heavy bits, a centre stand, racks, engine guards, 30-litre tank. This is my Outback Mile Muncher. Comfortable, practical, reliable, with a fuel range over 500 kilometres. And again, suspension to die for, this time courtesy of John Mitchinson from Rally Road Products. But the engine is its strongest point. It's such a pleasure to ride. Now, so we get you really confused, let's bring in potato theory. I use potatoes because most people have picked up a 5 kilogram bag of potatoes. The difference in weight between my T7 and my 501 is 20 bags of potatoes. And by any measure, that is a truckload of weight. Or is it? When I've asked my audience what is the key factor in purchasing a bike, about 70% say weight, and I say they're all nuts. It's far more complex than that. One of my other roles is as editor-at-large of Australian Adventure Bike magazine, and in that role I'm regularly testing just about every adventure bike that comes into my country. I'm going to suggest to you that motorcycle weight is not kilograms. It's a perception comprised of centre of gravity, steering head angle, seat height, handlebar height and width, whether the tyres are tubed or tubeless, and engine capacity. The list goes on. The larger the engine, the bigger spinning parts. This reciprocating mass acts like a gyroscope. Bigger bikes noticeably resist being turned off the straight line. The best example I know is to compare the actual weight in pounds of a Husqvarna 701 to the Honda CRF 300 Rally, compared to the perceived weight. The Honda is 335 pounds, the Husky is 13 pounds lighter at 322. Now I'm using pounds, we use kilograms in Australia, but we're in the old dart, so we'll use pounds. The Honda sags under the weight of my fat guts. The centre of gravity falls, the seat height is low, the Honda's steering is more responsive on the trails as there is less reciprocating mass and the steering geometry is more trail oriented. The Honda, it just feels lighter. And just when I feel I've confused you enough, I need to bring the Rhino into the mix, the BMW 1250 Rally X. I get it. For those who haven't ridden a Rhino, it's easy to become overwhelmed by the sheer size and presence of this bloody huge motorcycle. For the uninitiated, it's easy to write it off as being cumbersome and devoid of the capability of taking on the rough stuff. It's seen as a bike for those big open tracks, but in this test we dig deeper to appreciate the dirt handling characteristics of this bike. So hang on for the ride, it's going to be different. I was so lucky not to drop that bike. You can't see it, but right down near the back wheel there's a bit of metal that came up and stopped the rear wheels, just dead stopped. And the whole bike stopped and I thought I was going to go straight over sideways. But up until 5 years ago, I was never a fan of bikes this size, and yet the Beamer hides its weight so well. It just feels so planted. And when they fall over, those cylinders popping out at unnatural angles make it easy to pick up. In the past, a few years now, I've done thousands of kilometres on these bikes in the outback, and they are a wonderful performer in those conditions. Just absolutely brilliant. And then the girls bring me back to reality. The girls on the Cape York ride were clear on the expectations of what they wanted in a bike. There were two issues: seat height and could they pick it up. Nothing else mattered, and I reluctantly reckon they're spot on. For blokes, testosterone gets in the way, and many pining for adventure but with limited experience enter a motorcycle store and leave with a bike that has more horsepower than their car. But they're never happy. They need smaller testicles. Or may I strongly suggest starting on something smaller and having some fun. Like these little gems.
Don't look at me. Point the camera that way. Woohoo!
In this test, Clubby and I take the BMW G310 GS's way past their design limits and focus on their performance in the dirt and their capability to take you on a decent dirt-oriented adventure. It would be fair to say that I threw myself right into this assignment. Head first. We've chosen the 630 kilometre loop out of Sydney to Hill End, a famous old gold mining town. Yeah, head first into the Turon River on little 310s. Lots of fun. So I'm not giving you much help into that elusive question, which bike? But if you want to get to places like this, which is Songkhul, Kyrgyzstan, the best campsite in the world, I reckon you need a bike that gives you confidence and you're happy riding. Motorcycle companies do their best to build and maintain brand loyalty, but sadly, recent reliability issues are plaguing some brands. Surprisingly, customers are loyally staying with them. I don't understand it. I regard myself as multi-denominational. I'm not interested in brand, and what I'd suggest, walk on the wild side, try something different. If you're thinking big and you're not experienced in the dirt, picture yourself at the beginning of a 100-metre stretch of deep sand on that bike. And if you're crapping yourself, then the bike you're thinking about is too big for you. It might surprise you that despite all the bikes I've ridden, the one that gave me the most joy and wonderful memories was the mighty Bajaj 220 Pulsar. This little donkey took me all over India for the rental fee of $25 a day. It never missed a beat, even at extreme altitude. Here we're heading to the ancient city of Leh in northern India. To my left is the beginning of the magnificent Moray Plain. Now that's adventure. So many wonderful memories shared with mates on that little bike. We're coming to the end of the talk, and I wanted to leave you with an example of the type of adventure that rocks my boat. I stress, however, that everyone's path to adventure is unique. It's not a pissing contest. Adventure is what you make it and what makes your mates happy. 50 years ago, we called it trail riding and exploration. The word adventure has become overhyped and pressurising and sadly has scared potential riders away. The entry bar to adventure falsely appears higher than what it actually is. You don't need an expensive bike to have fun. I finish off with a teaser from the latest adventure film, Nepal Scrammed, that will be showing at 3:30 p.m. in the movie theatre in Ragley Hall. I'll be introducing the film and hanging around for questions and answers.
There's been a rock slide and we just had to clear this track. It's a long way down. Here goes Nosh.
Hold on to your helmets, folks. Get ready to join the ride of a lifetime with 4 adventurers as they kick convention to the curb and hit the road less travelled in the heart of Nepal.
On top of the world, in the Himalayas.
This is not your typical bike tour. It's a roller coaster of epic proportions. Picture this, challenging trails that make your heart race, a dash of history and culture, and encounters with the kind of people who redefine the word inspiring. We're not just talking about scratching the surface, we dove headfirst into the very soul of Nepal.
Yeah, Nice loves his mountains.
From the jaw-dropping majesty of Upper Mustang to the awe-inspiring views of Everest. And yeah, we even swapped exhaust notes with working elephants in Chitwan National Park. Hold on to your handlebars though, the real kicker, the monsoon decided to throw us a curveball, extending its stay and bringing challenges that had our hearts in our mouths.
Whoa, watch out, watch out!
So rev up those engines, buckle up and get ready for a motorcycle adventure that's not just about the destination, it's about the thrill of the journey.
We're in some serious altitude now.
Nepal, here we come. The road's waiting and so are the unforgettable stories we are about to create. So that adventure movie will be shown at 3:30 p.m. today. So if you'd like to come down, I'll answer question and answers about the actual movie. Now, adventure, solo or with friends or strangers. There's something uniquely exhilarating about sharing motorcycle adventures with mates. Each adventure becomes a shared tapestry of experiences and challenges and forges a deep camaraderie and enhances a lifelong friendship. I'm also certain that if it turns to shit, these mates will have my back. I'd like to finish by recognising the Mad TV crew. Nugget is to the left of screen, a very highly paid actor who interprets the world in an entertaining, down-to-earth fashion. In the centre of the shot is Nosh, our cultural attaché, who happens to be a wonderful photographer, videographer, and an all-round great bloke. This is Clubby, the most experienced motorcycle journalist in Australia and editor of Australian Adventure Bike magazine. We've had some cracking rides together. A wonderful riding companion and mate, but it's a challenge getting him overseas. He's not good with curry. And finally, there's Darren. Despite all the challenges, Darren and I made it from London to Sydney. Darren is the consummate riding companion, and on this special occasion, I've brought him a gift. So come up on the stage, Darren. I've got something to give you. He hates this picture that was taken by John Pullen, God bless his heart, in Samara in Russia, because the aeroplane looks like it's landed on his head. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having me.